Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This again is the humble and indefatigable voice of Olusegun Opeyemi Odunton. And the topic for today is the civic education of the masses. But before we begin, it is important to say that it is way past 12 a.m. here, when most of the oppressed people of the world are deep in their sleep, while their enemies, the oppressors, are wide awake, constantly scheming on how to rob them of their liberties and their meager livelihoods. However, the few of the fewest, the watchmen, the vanguards of the people, the vanguards of their consciousness, cannot afford to slumber. We continue to study the political and the civil resistance landscape of Nigeria, and the recurring trope and theme continues to be the need for sensitization, by which we mean political education. However, I crave your indulgence to put it simply as civic education, simply because there is the need to depoliticize the term. And how far or how well we can do that, no one knows. But right now, it is safe and it is better to avoid the word political, as a result of the widespread disappointment and disenchantment with politics as practiced in Nigeria by characters who have traumatized the people to breaking point, causing millions of Nigerians to lose confidence in the political process. So, ladies and gentlemen, what is civic education? Civic education is defined as the continual and systematic provision of information and learning experiences to all citizens for their effective participation in democratic life. It continues to say that the purpose of civic education is to have an informed citizenry that actively participate in governance affairs of the society on the basis of enhanced knowledge, on the basis of understanding and ownership. So, the point being made there is that civic education is the basis. It is the black box. It is the spinal cord. It is the heart of every democracy. And where this is faulty, where civic education is non-existent, there can be no democracy but dictatocracy. You may say, yes, we have periodic elections, but these are elections with free and fair question marks in them. And we are supposed to have separation of powers among the organs of government. But do we truly have the checks and balances necessary for a healthy democracy? The rule of law or the rule of war, where the use of force is the response to citizens' demands for good governance. But, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not here to vent. Ours is not to vent, but to ventilate, and to prevent every attempt to strangulate the civil liberties of the citizens. But we cannot achieve this goal in an atmosphere of choking civic illiteracy, a political landscape that stinks with or reeks of civic ignorance. And by civic ignorance or civic illiteracy, we mean or we do not intend disrespect. What we have discovered is academic literacy is not a guarantee for civic literacy. It does not matter that you have been to school, but if you have been to school and you have taken some social study classes, social studies, which is the kindergarten term for civic education, I can assure you that you have been misschooled, that you have been miseducated. And when I say that, I do not mean to be disrespectful. And I do not say that without critical thought and objectivity. I say this with a great sense of humility and responsibility. And with particular reference to Nigeria, it is important that we examine the historical and material facts. And these same facts apply to the whole of Africa. So, first, we, like the rest of human civilization, started out under monarchies or theocracies, whichever you chose to call them. But the constant factor, what was common to all of these systems, was that they were absolute. That is, they were totalitarian. So the king or the queen, the sultan, the tsar, the emperor or empresses, etc., were the sovereign and not the people. So if we zoom into Africa and Nigeria, we will begin to see kings, queens, chiefs, warlords who traded and sold their own people like livestock for over 450 years into transatlantic slavery. Soon after that, our race fell under colonial chains for another 7 decades, after which most of Africa tasted independence, democracy for barely half a decade before being hijacked by soldiers, by the barrel of the guns. In the Nigerian case, for this generation and for our ancestors to our parents and grandparents, they lived under a succession of absolute or totalitarian regimes. So whatever they or we learned in our social or civic study classes, there was no room for practice. Their sociological realities were inconsistent with the theory that they were taught in school. And so that is our realities too. So welcome to uninterrupted democracy since 1999. But for the most part, we have been ruled by retired generals. And the populace from centuries of experience have been wired to believe that the government and not the people, is the sovereign. So we have talked extensively. The question now is, what should be done? What should we do? First and foremost, we must trace the historical origins of our material consciousness or unconsciousness before we can rightly talk about the civic re-education of the masses. And this we have done. This is what we have been doing. So the task before us is very, very, very huge. Our goal is daunting. Well, it is a seismic task of national, cultural, and psychological reorientation of the oppressed. An educated army of citizens needed to defend and assure liberty. So the oppressors thrive in an atmosphere or in the atmosphere of civic ignorance. So this atmosphere we must fumigate with the light and power of knowledge. You may say we have the technology to aid us or to aid our work in spite of the clampdown. But we must acknowledge that the bulk of the people we must take this light to do not have access to digital media. So we must borrow. I recommend that we must borrow from the IFE, from the OAU tradition, where union leaders and activists go from room to rooms, out to house, theater to theaters, one-on-one with megaphones and leaflets, conscientizing and mobilizing. The result will always be disappointing if this patriotic mission is limited to election seasons only. So, as the definition of civic education rightly says, it is a continual and systematic process. It never ends. It lasts and outlasts a lifetime. And that is why Thomas Jefferson said, eternal vigilance. Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. So it is now left for every civil liberty organizations and individuals to design unique strategies tailored to take on this daunting challenge. I rest my case. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. If you like, please share. God bless you.